In this quick tip, we're going to walk through the 5 most valuable command line aliases. I'm Thomas with Brain Trust Digital. I'm a full stack developer obsessed with learning. If you're interested in learning full stack web development, please consider subscribing below. Everyone's workflow is different, but for me personally, I consider these aliases very valuable because I use them every single day and they save me tons of time. You're gonna wanna stick around to the end because I think the last 2 are particularly valuable. I use them several times a day and they save me a ton of time. With that being said, let's get into the quick tip by way of a pro YouTuber transition. One quick note before we get started, I am going to be including all of the aliases in the description section below. With that out of the way, let's get started. The first alias here is something I use to quickly traverse folder structures, where I alias ... to cd up one folder and ... to back out 2 folders. So as you can see in practice, there I've backed up out of the shared folder, and here I will back out of the devise and views folders. This is nothing groundbreaking, it's just a simple convenience alias for me as something I use quite frequently to quickly traverse folders in my applications. Next is showing and hiding files. This is a pretty long command, so as I mentioned, this will be in the description below. Having the ability to show hidden files, you're also going to want the ability to undo or hide hidden files. By default, .files are hidden, but there are scenarios where you may want to see these. So showFiles and hideFiles are very nice for that. As you can see here, we're in a Rails application. This application has a .getIgnore. If we open this current application up in Finder, you're not going to see that getIgnore because .files are hidden by default. If we flip back over to the terminal and run showFiles, you may have seen that in the background that Finder closed and then reopened to utilize this new setting. If we flip back over to Finder, now you can see the .getIgnore as well as the .ruby-version. And any other hidden files that would be present in this application. This just gives you the opportunity if you needed to drag these around or move them. I'm not going to do that since I want these files in the exact positions that they're at. You could also have the opportunity to delete or copy them, really whatever you need here. Once you're finished with your changes, then you can go ahead and hide these files. So I'll move this over to the side, and if you watch carefully through the transparency in my terminal, as I type hideFiles, correctly spelled, this will close and then reopen with the proper setting of files hidden. If I flip back over to the Finder window, you can see now there are no more hidden files shown. The next alias I have is flush. I use this to run this very long command that flushes the OS X DNS cache. This is particularly useful if you're doing anything with domain names. So you've seen me use this when working through some of the Route 53 tutorials. And this piece here at the end is just using the say command. This is not important at all. I just left this in here as a way to see how you could include audio cues in the form of spoken text using the built-in say command. So in a computer-generated voice is going to say cache flush, but it could say anything you write here inside the single quotes. Point being more that this is not important to the command, but rather just to highlight that you could in fact have audio cues associated with your aliases. If I were to switch over to the terminal and run this command, because of the way I have my microphone set up, you're not going to hear the audio cue. And this is a sudo command, so I am going to need to type in my password. In this case, I can't really prove that that worked, but I'll include a link to one of the Route 53 tutorials where I show how this works. Basically, anytime you're working with DNS, you're going to want to constantly be clearing your browser in local DNS cache. The next command I have here is cpd, which I've aliased to cap production deploy. This alias obviously implies that you're using a Capistrano deployment and you have a production stage. This is a model I follow in all of my Ruby on Rails applications, and Capistrano is not limited to Ruby on Rails. You can use it with PHP or JavaScript, really whatever you want. I just find myself constantly deploying, so having a quick shorthand to be able to do that is really nice. And run cpd, I'm initiating a Capistrano deployment. The ability to deploy and deploy quickly is really beneficial. So having this command helps me deploy that much quicker. If you don't have a Capistrano deploy and you'd like to learn how to create one, I have a tutorial covering that I'll link in the card as well as the description below. Lastly, I have the alias dbp or database pull for Cap Production DB pull. The first thing this alias does is pulls the production database down to your local environment, destroying your local database and replacing it with production data. This command relies on the capdb tasks gem. I have covered this in a previous tutorial. If you need to learn how to create this, I will link to the tutorial walking through all the steps in the card as well as the description below. This relies on the fact that you're using Capistrano for your project and that you're also using the Capistrano DB tasks gem. These two items I include in every single project because I use them so frequently and they're so convenient. Being able to immediately pull production data down locally is invaluable when attempting to debug errors. In the next piece of this command, I'm setting the database environment to development. When pulling your database down locally, you can get in a scenario where Rails thinks that it is in a production environment since it has just pulled down the production database. So I tack this onto this command to pull production data down locally, but then immediately tell Rails, hey, no, this is still development. We're working in development even though we've just overwritten our development data with production data. If I log into the console, you can see there are 13 videos in this AWS Rails application. If I destroy all of those videos and then break out of the console, flipping back over to the browser to refresh, you can see there are now no videos in the application. Now if I clear the screen and run a dbp to use the Capistrano DB tasks gem to pull my production database locally and hit yes that I want to overwrite my local database with my production database, you can see the command in action. If we flip back over to the browser and refresh, as you can see, all the videos have been restored, or rather all of the videos that were in production have been pulled down to my local database. These are 5 valuable command line aliases that I use every single day. I figured I could introduce you to one more bonus alias, the big red subscribe button. If you go ahead and click that now, that lets you receive similar content like this. Full stack web development tutorials centered primarily around Ruby, Rails, AWS, and infrastructure. And with that, I'll catch you in the next quick tip.